The moment Isaac Tanner found the woman collapsed by the dried creek bed, vultures already circling overhead, he knew his lonely life as a drifter was about to change forever. He had been riding through the New Mexico territory for 3 weeks straight, avoiding the main roads after a misunderstanding with a cattle baron's son in Santa Fe. The August heat was merciless, and even his horse, a sturdy mare named Clementine, was showing signs of exhaustion. Isaac had been heading toward Agua Caliente, a small settlement nestled in the hills where he hoped to find work and lay low for a while. The landscape stretched out endlessly in all directions, all red rock and sparse vegetation, beautiful in its own harsh way. At first he thought the dark shape ahead might be a fallen animal, but as he drew closer, his stomach tightened. It was a woman, dressed in what had once been a fine traveling dress, now torn and stained with dust and blood. She lay on her side, one arm stretched out as though reaching for something just beyond her grasp. Isaac dismounted quickly, his boots hitting the hard ground with a soft thud. He approached cautiously, not knowing if she was alive or dead. As he knelt beside her, he saw her chest rise and fall, barely perceptible. Her face was sunburned, lips cracked and bleeding, dark hair matted with sweat and dirt. She could not have been more than 25 years old. "Madam," he said, his voice rough from days of minimal conversation. "Madam, can you hear me?" She did not respond. Isaac looked around, searching for any sign of what had happened. In the distance, he could make out the remains of a burned wagon still smoking. His jaw tightened. Raiders, most likely, or bandits. Either way, this woman had been through hell. He moved quickly, retrieving his canteen from Clementine's saddle. Carefully, he lifted the woman's head and brought the water to her lips. At first, nothing happened, but then her body reacted instinctively, and she began to swallow in small, desperate gulps. "Easy," Isaac murmured. "Not too fast, or you will make yourself sick." Her eyes flickered open, and he found himself looking into the most striking hazel eyes he had ever seen. They were filled with pain and confusion, darting around wildly before focusing on his face. "Where?" Her voice was barely a whisper, raw and broken. "You are safe now," Isaac said, though he was not entirely sure that was true. They were still miles from anywhere, and night would fall soon. "What happened to you?" The woman's eyes filled with tears, and she tried to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she began to shake, her entire body trembling with suppressed sobs. Isaac felt something twist inside his chest, an unfamiliar sensation. He had seen suffering before, plenty of it in his 30 years, but something about this woman's anguish cut through his usual defenses. "It is all right," he said, surprising himself with the gentleness in his tone. "You do not have to talk about it now. Let me get you somewhere safe first." He fashioned a makeshift shade using his bedroll and some branches, then went to investigate the burned wagon. The scene was worse than he had imagined. 2 bodies lay nearby, a man and a boy, both shot. The wagon had been ransacked, everything of value taken. From the tracks, Isaac could tell there had been at least 5 riders, heading south toward the border. They had a good lead, maybe 12 hours or more. When he returned to the woman, she was sitting up, hugging her knees to her chest. She watched him approach with wary eyes. "My husband," she said. "My son, are they?" Isaac removed his hat, holding it against his chest. "I am sorry, madam." "They are gone." The sound that came from her was inhuman, a wail of pure grief that seemed to tear itself from the depths of her soul. Isaac stood there, helpless, as she rocked back and forth, her arms wrapped around herself. He had seen many people die, had dealt with death in all its forms, but he had never known how to handle someone else's grief. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the woman's cries subsided into quiet weeping. She looked up at him, her face streaked with tears and dirt. "Delilah," she said hoarsely. "My name is Delilah Armstrong." "Isaac Tanner, madam." He crouched down to her level. "I know this is not what you want to hear right now, but we need to move. It is not safe to stay out here in the open, especially with night coming on. The men who did this might come back." Delilah looked toward the wagon, and Isaac could see her wanting to go to her family to say goodbye properly. He understood that need, had felt it himself when his own brother had been killed in a saloon fight years ago. "Give me a few minutes," he said. "I will take care of them. You should not have to see that." She nodded mutely, and Isaac went to work. He buried the bodies as best he could with the tools he had, piling rocks over the graves to keep animals away. It was hard, brutal work in the heat, but he pushed through it. When he was finished, he stood over the graves and said a few words, though he was not a religious man. It seemed like the right thing to do. Delilah had managed to stand by the time he returned, though she swayed on her feet. Without asking permission, Isaac swept her up into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, probably had not eaten in days. "I can walk," she protested weakly. "Maybe so, but we will get there faster this way." He settled her onto Clementine's saddle, then swung up behind her. The horse snorted in protest at the extra weight, but began walking when Isaac urged her forward. Delilah sat stiffly at first, but as exhaustion overtook her, she leaned back against Isaac's chest. He wrapped one arm around her waist to steady her, trying to ignore the way her proximity affected him. This was not the time for such thoughts. They rode through the afternoon and into the evening, Isaac following a path only he could see. He had traveled this country enough to know where to find water and shelter. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, they reached a small cave tucked into a rocky outcropping. It was not much, but it would keep them hidden and protected from the elements. Isaac helped Delilah down, and she immediately collapsed onto the sandy floor of the cave. He unsaddled Clementine, gave her some of their precious water, and tied her where she could graze on the sparse grass. Then he set about making a small fire, keeping it low so the smoke would not be visible from a distance. "You should eat something," he said, offering Delilah some jerky and hardtack from his supplies. She shook her head. "I cannot. You need to keep your strength up. What does it matter?" Her voice was hollow, emotionless. "They are dead, my husband, my little boy. Thomas was only 8 years old. 8. He had his whole life ahead of him, and now—" She trailed off, staring into the flames. Isaac sat down across from her, unsure of what to say. He was not good with words, never had been. Action was more his language. But Delilah needed something from him, some kind of comfort, and he felt woefully inadequate to provide it. "How did it happen?" he finally asked. Delilah was silent for so long that Isaac thought she might not answer. Then slowly she began to speak. "We were traveling from St. Louis to California. My husband, Richard, he had a brother out there who owned land, said we could start fresh. Richard had been a banker, but the business failed. We lost everything. The house, our savings, everything. California seemed like our only chance." She wrapped her arms around herself, though the night was still warm. "We joined a wagon train in Independence, but Richard, he was impatient. The pace was too slow, he said. We would get to California and find all the good opportunities already taken. So he convinced me we should go ahead on our own, take a more direct route. I did not want to, but he was so sure, so certain." Her voice cracked, and she paused to compose herself. 3 days ago they came out of nowhere. 5 men, their faces covered with bandanas. They wanted everything. Richard tried to fight them, tried to protect us. They shot him first. Then Thomas ran to his father and they— She could not finish the sentence. Isaac felt anger rising in his chest, hot and fierce. He had seen a lot of cruelty in his years, but killing a child was something that turned his stomach. "They took everything," Delilah continued. "Our money, supplies, even my mother's jewelry, the only things I had left of her. Then they set the wagon on fire and rode off, laughing. Laughing. I hid under some brush nearby. I was too scared to move, too shocked. By the time I came out, it was too late. I tried to save them, but the fire was too hot. I just ran. I do not even know how far or for how long. The next thing I remember is waking up with you giving me water." Isaac leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. "Those men, they are long gone by now, probably across the border into Mexico. There is no law out here that will go after them, no justice to be had. I know." Delilah's voice was bitter. "I have lost everything. My family, my future, my past. I have nothing left." "You have your life," Isaac said quietly. "That is something," she laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Is it? What kind of life can I have now, a woman alone with no money, no family, no prospects? I should have died with them." "Do not say that, why not?" "It is the truth." Isaac stood abruptly, agitated, because giving up is easy. Living, that is the hard part. That is the part that takes real courage. Delilah looked up at him, surprised by the intensity in his voice. "What do you know about it? More than you might think." He turned away, staring out into the darkness beyond the cave entrance. "I lost my family too. My parents died of cholera when I was 15. My brother, the only person I had left in the world, was killed in a meaningless fight over a card game 5 years ago. I was angry for a long time after that, angry at God, at the world, at everyone. Part of me wanted to just give up, let the desert or the drink or the next gunfight take me." "Why did you not?" Isaac turned back to face her. "Because my brother, before he died, he told me that life was too precious to waste. That even when things seemed darkest, there was always a reason to keep going, even if we could not see it at the time. I did not believe him then, but I do now." Delilah wiped at her eyes. "I do not know if I can do this. I do not know if I am that strong." "You are stronger than you think. You survived, did you not? That takes strength." She did not respond, just stared into the fire. Isaac sat back down, and they remained in silence for a long while, each lost in their own thoughts. Eventually, exhaustion claimed Delilah, and she curled up on the ground, asleep almost instantly. Isaac kept watch through the night, feeding the fire and listening to the sounds of the desert. Coyotes howled in the distance, and once he heard the distinctive rattle of a snake passing nearby. He thought about Delilah, about the tragedy that had befallen her, and about what would happen when they reached Agua Caliente. He had no plan beyond getting her to safety. After that, she would be on her own, and he would continue his drifting existence. But even as he thought it, he knew something had shifted inside him. This woman had stirred something he thought long dead, a desire to protect, to care for someone other than himself. It frightened him, this feeling. Caring about people led to pain, to loss. He had learned that lesson well. Yet as he watched her sleep, her face peaceful for the first time since he had found her, Isaac could not bring himself to regret stopping to help her. Whatever came next, at least he had done this one good thing. Dawn came slowly, the sky lightening by degrees until the sun burst over the horizon in a blaze of gold and red. Delilah woke with a start, momentarily disoriented before memory crashed back over her. Isaac saw the moment it happened, the way her face crumpled before she forced it back into a mask of composure. "We should get moving," he said, keeping his voice matter of fact. "Agua Caliente is about half a day's ride from here." Delilah nodded and stood, brushing the dust from her ruined dress. Isaac noticed she moved stiffly, probably sore from the ordeal and from sleeping on the hard ground. He handed her some water and the last of his jerky. "Eat," he said, in a tone that brooked no argument. This time she did not refuse. They broke camp quickly, Isaac working with the practiced efficiency of a man who had done this 1,000 times before. Soon they were back on Clementine, heading northwest toward the settlement. As they rode, Delilah began to talk. At first, it was just small observations about the landscape, but gradually, she opened up more, telling Isaac about her life before the tragedy. She spoke of her childhood in Philadelphia, of her father who had been a doctor, of her marriage to Richard and their early years together. She talked about Thomas, the way he loved to read, his fascination with trains, his infectious laugh. Isaac mostly listened, offering the occasional comment or question. He realized that Delilah needed this, needed to remember that her husband and son had been real people with full lives, not just victims of random violence. In talking about them, she was keeping them alive in some small way. By late afternoon, they crested a hill and Agua Caliente came into view below them. It was not much to look at, just a collection of adobe buildings clustered around a central square, with a church at one end and what looked like a saloon at the other. But to Isaac, it meant safety, or at least as close to it as one could get in this wild country. They rode into town slowly, drawing curious stares from the few people on the street. Isaac knew how they must look, him dusty and trail-worn, Delilah in her torn dress, both of them riding together on one horse. No doubt the town gossips would have a field day. He stopped in front of a building with a sign that read, Dr. Hiram Collins, physician. A woman in her 50s with graying hair and kind eyes was sweeping the porch. "Afternoon, madam," Isaac said, touching the brim of his hat. "Is the doctor in?" The woman set down her broom, taking in Delilah's condition with a practiced eye. "I am the doctor's wife, Margaret." "What seems to be the trouble?" Isaac helped Delilah down from the horse. "This lady has been through an ordeal. She needs medical attention and a safe place to stay." Margaret moved forward immediately, putting a supportive arm around Delilah. "Of course. Come inside, dear. We will get you fixed up." She looked at Isaac. "What happened?" "Raiders attacked her wagon, killed her husband and son. I found her out in the desert, near dead from exposure." Margaret's expression hardened. "Those animals. They have been hitting travelers all along the southern route. The law does nothing about it." She guided Delilah toward the door. "Hiram, I need you." A tall, thin man with spectacles appeared in the doorway. "What is it, Margaret?" "We have a patient, and from the looks of her, she has been through the wars." Dr. Collins took one look at Delilah and immediately went into action, ushering her inside. Isaac made to leave, but Margaret caught his arm. "Where are you going?" "I have done what I can for her. She is in good hands now. You are not just going to ride off, are you?" "That poor woman will need someone when she recovers, someone she knows." Isaac shifted uncomfortably. "She does not know me, I just happened to find her." "Nevertheless, you saved her life. That creates a bond whether you like it or not." Margaret's gaze was shrewd. "Besides, you look like you could use a good meal and a place to rest yourself. We have a spare room out back. You are welcome to it." Isaac wanted to refuse, to mount Clementine and ride out of town without looking back. It was what he always did, never staying in one place long enough to form attachments. But something held him there, rooted to the spot. "All right," he heard himself say. "Just for a day or two until she is back on her feet." Margaret smiled as though she had known all along what his answer would be. "Good. Now, take your horse to the livery stable, 2 buildings down. Tell Gus that Margaret Collins sent you and he will take good care of her. Then come back here and I will have some food ready for you." Isaac did as he was told, grateful for clear instructions. The liveryman, Gus, was a barrel-chested Mexican man with a ready smile. He took Clementine's reins and assured Isaac that the horse would be well fed and groomed. Isaac paid him $1, which seemed to please him greatly. When Isaac returned to the doctor's house, Margaret led him to a small but clean room behind the main building. There was a narrow bed, a washstand with a basin and pitcher, and a chair. It was more than Isaac usually had. "The pump is out back," Margaret said. "Help yourself to water. Supper will be ready in an hour." She left him alone, and Isaac took the opportunity to wash the dust and grime from his face and hands. The water was cool and refreshing, and he felt almost human again afterward. He lay down on the bed, intending to rest for just a few minutes, but exhaustion overtook him and he fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. He woke to a gentle knock on the door. It was dark outside now and lamplight spilled in from the main house. "Mr. Tanner, supper is ready." Isaac opened the door to find Margaret waiting. He followed her into the house proper, where a table was set with simple but hearty fare: stew, fresh bread, and coffee. Dr. Collins was already seated and he gestured for Isaac to join him. "How is she?" Isaac asked, surprising himself with how much he wanted to know. "Physically, she will recover," Collins said. "Dehydration, sunburn, minor cuts and scrapes, nothing that time will not heal. Emotionally." He shook his head. "That is another matter. The trauma she has endured would break most people. She is in shock right now, which is probably a mercy. The full weight of it has not hit her yet." "Where is she now?" "Sleeping in our spare bedroom upstairs. Margaret gave her a sedative. She needs rest more than anything." They ate in silence for a few minutes, Isaac wolfing down the food. He had not realized how hungry he was. "Margaret tells me you found her out in the desert," Collins said. "Yes, sir. Pure chance, really. I was heading this way anyhow." "Well, it is fortunate for her that you came along when you did. Another few hours and she would have been dead." Collins studied Isaac over his coffee cup. "What are your plans now?" Isaac shrugged. "I was hoping to find work here for a while. I know my way around horses and cattle. I can do manual labor, building, whatever needs doing." "Can you handle a gun?" The question surprised Isaac. "I can shoot straight if that is what you are asking." "Why?" "Because Agua Caliente could use a man like you. We have been having trouble with rustlers and bandits. The local ranchers have been talking about hiring someone to help protect their herds." "I am not a lawman or a gunfighter," Isaac said carefully. "I have done my share of fighting, but I do not make a habit of it. I am not asking you to be a hired gun. Just someone who can help patrol, maybe track down stolen cattle, provide a bit of security. The ranchers would pay well." Isaac considered it. He had enough money saved to last him a few weeks, but work was work, and he needed something to do while he was here. "I will think about it." After supper, Isaac stepped outside for some air. The night was cool, a welcome relief from the day's heat. He walked through the quiet streets, noting the layout of the town. Besides the doctor's house, there was indeed a saloon, a general store, a blacksmith, the livery stable, a small church, and about 20 homes scattered around. At the edge of town, he could see a larger building that looked like a ranch house, probably belonging to one of the local cattlemen Collins had mentioned. He found himself drawn back to the doctor's house, standing in the yard and looking up at the window where Delilah slept. He told himself he was just making sure she was all right, but he knew it was more than that. Something about this woman had gotten under his skin in a way he did not quite understand. The next morning, Isaac was up early, helping Margaret with chores around the property. He fixed a broken step on the porch, repaired a section of fence, and hauled water from the well. It felt good to be useful, to have a purpose beyond simply surviving. Around mid-morning, Delilah emerged from the house. She looked better than she had the day before, her face clean, wearing a borrowed dress that was too big for her. but her eyes still held that hollow, haunted look. "Good morning," Isaac said, setting down the hammer he had been using. "Good morning." Her voice was quiet but steady. "I wanted to thank you for saving my life. I have not done that properly yet." "No thanks necessary. Anyone would have done the same." "No, they would not have. Many people would have just ridden past, not wanting to get involved." She moved closer, and Isaac caught the faint scent of lavender. "Margaret must have given her soap to wash with." "Margaret told me you are staying in town for a while." "For a bit, yes. I need to find work." Delilah nodded, looking down at her hands. "I have been thinking about what comes next for me. I have no money, no family, no place to go. Margaret has kindly offered to let me stay with them for now, but I cannot impose on their generosity forever. I need to find a way to support myself." "What did you do before?" "Back in St. Louis, I taught piano lessons to children from wealthy families." "But there is not much call for that here, I imagine." Isaac thought for a moment. "Can you read and write well?" "Of course. I had a good education." "Then you could teach school. Towns like this always need teachers." "The children often go without proper schooling because there is no one to teach them." Delilah's eyes widened slightly. "I never thought of that. Do you think they would hire me?" "Only one way to find out. You should talk to the town council. Collins is on it, along with the blacksmith and the owner of the general store." For the first time since he had found her, Isaac saw a glimmer of hope in Delilah's expression. It transformed her face, making her look younger, less burdened. He realized she must have been quite beautiful before tragedy struck. And even now, there was something about her that drew him. Over the next few days, Isaac found himself spending more and more time around Delilah. He told himself it was just to make sure she was recovering properly, that he was simply being neighborly. But the truth was, he enjoyed her company. Despite everything she had been through, there was a strength in her, a determination not to be defeated by circumstances. Delilah, for her part, seemed to find comfort in Isaac's presence. He was solid, reliable, a rock in the storm of her grief. They took to walking together in the evenings after the heat of the day had passed. They talked about everything and nothing, their pasts, their hopes, their fears. Isaac found himself opening up to her in ways he never had with anyone else. One evening, about a week after they had arrived in Agua Caliente, they were sitting on the porch of the doctor's house, watching the sun set over the distant mountains. Delilah had met with the town council that afternoon, and they had agreed to hire her as the town's schoolteacher, with classes starting in September when the worst of the summer heat had passed. "I cannot believe it," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "I have a job, a purpose. A reason to keep going." "I told you, you are stronger than you thought," Isaac said. Delilah turned to look at him, her hazel eyes searching his face. "I could not have done this without you, Isaac. You gave me hope when I had none. You made me believe that life was still worth living." Isaac felt his chest tighten. "You would have found your way eventually. You are that kind of person." "Maybe, but I am glad I did not have to do it alone." She hesitated, then reached out and placed her hand over his. The touch sent a jolt through Isaac like lightning. "These past days, talking with you, being near you, it has meant more to me than you know." Isaac looked down at their joined hands, 1,000 thoughts racing through his mind. He was falling for this woman, had been since the moment he found her. But was it right? She had just lost her husband and child. Was it too soon? Was he taking advantage of her vulnerability? As though reading his mind, Delilah said softly, "I know what you are thinking, that it is too soon, that I am still grieving. And you are right, I am. I will probably grieve for the rest of my life, but that does not mean I cannot also feel other things, gratitude, friendship, and something more. Delilah, I do not want to complicate your life more than it already is. You are not. You are doing the opposite." She squeezed his hand. I am not saying we rush into anything. I know I need time, but I also know that I feel something when I am with you, something I did not expect to feel again. And I think you feel it too." Isaac met her eyes, and in them he saw not just grief and pain, but also warmth and possibility. "I do," he admitted, "but I am afraid. I have lost everyone I ever cared about. I do not know if I can go through that again." "None of us know what the future holds," Delilah said. "We could spend our lives afraid of losing each other, or we could take a chance and see where this goes. I think. I think Richard would want me to be happy again, eventually. And I think your brother would want the same for you." They sat there as the last light faded from the sky, holding hands and saying nothing, but understanding everything. It was a beginning, tentative and uncertain, but a beginning nonetheless. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest Isaac had ever known. He took the job Collins had mentioned, working for a consortium of local ranchers to help protect their herds and track down stolen cattle. It was hard work, but it paid well, and it gave him a reason to stay in Agua Caliente. He and Delilah continued to spend their evenings together, their relationship deepening with each passing day. They were careful, respectful of the proprieties, knowing that the town was watching them. But alone, away from prying eyes, they allowed themselves to grow closer. Isaac learned the full depth of Delilah's intelligence and humor. She was well-read, with opinions on everything from politics to poetry. She challenged him, made him think about things he had never considered before. In turn, he taught her about the West, about survival and self-reliance. He showed her how to shoot a rifle, how to track animals, how to read the signs of approaching weather. One afternoon in late August, they rode out together to a spot Isaac had discovered, a hidden canyon with a natural spring. The water was crystal clear and cold, fed by underground sources. Cottonwood trees provided shade, and wildflowers grew along the banks. "It is beautiful," Delilah breathed, dismounting from the horse Isaac had borrowed for her from the livery. "I thought you might like it. I come here sometimes when I need to think." They sat by the spring, eating the lunch Margaret had packed for them. Delilah dipped her bare feet in the water, sighing with pleasure at the coolness. "Isaac," she said after a while, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What happened between you and that cattle baron's son? You mentioned it when we first met, but you never gave me the details." Isaac grimaced. "It is not much of a story. I was working on his father's ranch, breaking horses. He thought I was not showing him enough respect, that I was getting too familiar with one of the ranch hand's daughters. Truth was, the girl and I were just friends, but he did not see it that way. He tried to pick a fight with me. I avoided it as long as I could, but then he pulled a gun. I disarmed him, might have been a bit rougher than I needed to be. His father told me to leave before he had me arrested for assault." "Were you getting too familiar with the girl?" Isaac met her eyes. "No, like I said, we were friends. Besides, even if I had wanted more, it would not have gone anywhere. I never stay in one place long enough for that." "And now," Delilah's voice was quiet, "do you still feel that way?" Isaac was silent for a long moment, watching the play of sunlight on the water. "No," he finally said. "I think maybe I have been running for so long that I forgot what it is like to have a home, to have someone to come back to. But being here with you, it has reminded me. And I find I do not want to run anymore." Delilah smiled, and it was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. She leaned in, and Isaac met her halfway, their lips touching in a kiss that was tender and tentative, but full of promise. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "I think I am falling in love with you, Isaac Tanner," Delilah said. "I know I am falling in love with you, Delilah Armstrong," Isaac replied. They spent the rest of the afternoon at the spring, talking and laughing, stealing kisses when the mood struck. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Isaac felt genuinely happy, not just content or resigned, but truly joyful. As September arrived, Delilah threw herself into preparing for her teaching duties. The town had a small schoolhouse that had been sitting empty for 2 years since the last teacher had moved away. Delilah cleaned it from top to bottom, organized the books and supplies the town provided, and made lesson plans for students of all ages. Isaac helped her when he could, building new desks and benches, repairing the roof where it leaked, whitewashing the walls. They worked side by side, and Isaac was struck by how natural it felt, how right. This was what he wanted, he realized. Not a life of drifting and loneliness, but this: purpose, partnership, love. The school opened the first Monday of September, and 12 children showed up, ranging in age from 6 to 14. Delilah was nervous but excited, and Isaac watched from the doorway as she greeted each child by name, made them feel welcome, and began her first lesson. She was a natural teacher, patient and enthusiastic, and he could see the children responding to her. That evening she came to him glowing with happiness. "It went so well, Isaac, better than I could have hoped. The children are bright and eager to learn. This is going to work. I can build a life here." "We can build a life here," Isaac corrected gently. Delilah's eyes shone. "We." I like the sound of that. So do I. As autumn progressed, Isaac and Delilah became an accepted couple in Agua Caliente. The town had been hesitant at first, conscious of propriety and the fact that Delilah was a widow. But as they saw how happy the pair were, how well they suited each other, even the most conservative busybodies softened. In October, Isaac built a small house on a piece of land just outside of town. It was not much, just 2 rooms and a loft, but it was sturdy and well made. He had saved enough from his work with the ranchers to buy the materials, and several of the town men had helped with the construction. "It is for us," he told Delilah when he showed it to her. "If you will have me. I know we have not known each other long, and if you want to wait, I understand. But I love you, Delilah. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to build a future together." Delilah looked at the house, then at Isaac, and tears began to stream down her face. For a moment, Isaac panicked, thinking he had pushed too hard, asked too much. But then she threw her arms around him. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will have you. I love you too, Isaac, more than I thought I could love again." They were married in late November in the small church in Agua Caliente. It was a simple ceremony with most of the town in attendance. Dr. and Margaret Collins stood up for them, beaming with pride as though Isaac and Delilah were their own children. The priest spoke about new beginnings and the resilience of the human spirit, and when Isaac and Delilah exchanged their vows, there was not a dry eye in the church. That night, in their small house, they began their life together. Isaac had worried that Delilah might be haunted by memories of her first marriage, but she assured him that what they had was different, special in its own way. She would always carry Richard and Thomas in her heart, but that did not mean there was not room for Isaac as well. "Love is not finite," she told him as they lay together in the darkness. "It does not run out. The love I have for you does not diminish what I felt for them. It just means my heart has grown bigger." Isaac held her close, marveling at how this woman had changed him. A few months ago, he had been a loner, drifting from place to place with no real purpose. Now he had a wife, a home, a community. He had something worth fighting for, worth living for. Their first winter together was harsh, with snow and bitter cold unusual for New Mexico. But their little house was warm, and they were happy. Delilah continued teaching, and Isaac continued working for the ranchers. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, reading or talking content in each other's company. In the spring, Delilah told him she was pregnant. Isaac was overjoyed but also terrified. He knew the dangers of childbirth, had lost his own mother to it, but Delilah was calm and confident. "I will be fine," she assured him. "We will be fine." Dr. Collins monitored her closely throughout the pregnancy, and Margaret fussed over her like a mother hen. The whole town seemed invested in the baby's well-being, with the women bringing food and baby clothes and the men offering Isaac advice, both solicited and not. In early November, just a year after their wedding, Delilah went into labor. It was long and difficult, lasting nearly 20 hours. Isaac paced outside the bedroom, driving Margaret and Collins crazy with his worry. But finally, just as dawn was breaking, he heard the sound he had been waiting for, a baby's cry. Collins emerged from the room, exhausted but smiling. "You have a son, Isaac, a healthy baby boy. And Delilah is doing well." Isaac rushed into the room to find Delilah propped up in bed, pale and tired but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket. She looked up as he entered, and the love in her eyes took his breath away. "Meet your son," she said softly. Isaac approached almost reverently, looking down at the small, red face of his child. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was waving tiny fists in the air, apparently unhappy about being out in the cold world. "He is perfect," Isaac whispered. "You are perfect. What should we name him?" Delilah asked. They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but had not settled on anything. Now, looking at his son, Isaac knew. "James," he said. "After my brother, if that is all right with you." Delilah smiled. "James Tanner, I think it is perfect." Young James was a healthy, happy baby, and he brought even more joy into their lives. Isaac discovered a capacity for tenderness he had not known he possessed. He would spend hours just watching his son sleep, marveling at the tiny fingers and toes, the way the baby's face scrunched up when he was hungry. As James grew, the little house became too small, and Isaac built an addition, adding 2 more bedrooms and expanding the main living area. He was making good money now, having been promoted to foreman for the largest ranch in the area. The owner, a gruff but fair man named Samuel Morrison, recognized Isaac's skills with horses and cattle, as well as his leadership abilities. Delilah thrived as a teacher and mother. She had a natural ability to balance both roles, and the children of Agua Caliente adored her. She expanded the school's curriculum, adding history and literature to the basic reading and arithmetic. Some of her older students went on to attend schools in Santa Fe and even back east, thanks to her preparation. When James was 2, Delilah became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and in the summer of 1879 they welcomed a daughter they named Sarah, after Delilah's mother. Sarah had her mother's hazel eyes and her father's dark hair, and she was as different from her brother as could be. Where James was cautious and thoughtful, Sarah was bold and adventurous. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Isaac would work on the ranch during the day, coming home to his family in the evenings. Delilah would teach school and care for the children, often bringing them with her to the schoolhouse when they were old enough. On Sundays, they would go to church, then spend the afternoon together, perhaps riding out to the spring where Isaac had first told Delilah he loved her. But the West was still a wild place, and peace was not always guaranteed. In the spring of 1881, when James was 3 and Sarah not quite 2, trouble came to Agua Caliente. A gang of outlaws, led by a vicious man named Ned Crawley, had been terrorizing towns and ranches throughout the territory. They were too well organized and too ruthless for local law enforcement to handle, and the territorial governor seemed more interested in politics than in protecting his constituents. One day, while Isaac was out checking on the herds, the gang hit the town. They robbed the bank and the general store, shooting the store owner when he tried to resist. Then they rode through the streets, firing their guns and terrorizing the townspeople. By the time Isaac got back to town, alerted by the sound of gunfire, the gang was gone. But they had left destruction in their wake. The store owner, a kind man named Peter Hoffman, who had been one of the witnesses at Isaac and Delilah's wedding, was dead. Several others were wounded. Isaac found Delilah at the schoolhouse, where she had barricaded herself and the children inside. She was shaken but unhurt, as were all the students. But Isaac could see the fear in her eyes, the same fear he had seen that first day he found her in the desert. "It is all right," he told her, holding her close. "They are gone now." "For how long?" Delilah asked. "They will come back, Isaac." Men like that always do. She was right, and Isaac knew it. The town held a meeting that evening, and the consensus was clear. They needed to do something about Crawley and his gang. Waiting for the territorial government to act was useless. "We need to form a posse," Samuel Morrison said. "Track them down and bring them to justice. Or just shoot them where we find them," another rancher added grimly. "They deserve no better." Isaac found himself volunteered to lead the posse, given his tracking skills and his experience with firearms. He was reluctant, not wanting to leave Delilah and the children, but he also knew it was necessary. As long as Crawley was out there, no one in the territory was safe. "I do not want you to go," Delilah said that night after they had put the children to bed. "I cannot lose you, Isaac. Not after everything we have built together." "You will not lose me," Isaac promised, though he knew it was not a promise he could guarantee. "But I have to do this. For us, for our children, for everyone in this town. If I do not, I will not be able to live with myself." Delilah nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know you have to go, but that does not make it any easier." They held each other that night, neither of them sleeping much, both trying to memorize every detail in case it was their last time together. The next morning, Isaac rode out with 11 other men from Agua Caliente and the surrounding ranches. They were determined, well-armed, and angry. The gang had left a clear trail, apparently not expecting pursuit. They were heading south, probably making for the border. It took 3 days of hard riding, but they finally caught up with the gang at an abandoned ranch near the border. There was a brief, violent confrontation. 2 of the posse members were wounded, and 4 of the gang were killed, including Crawley himself. The rest surrendered, knowing they were outmatched. Isaac and the posse returned to Agua Caliente with the surviving gang members tied to their horses. They turned them over to the territorial marshal, who happened to be passing through the area. Justice, such as it was, would be served. When Isaac rode up to his house, Delilah ran out to meet him. She had been watching for him every day, barely sleeping or eating. She threw herself into his arms, and Isaac held her tight, breathing in her scent, feeling her warmth. "I told you I would come back," he murmured into her hair. "I know, but I was still afraid." They went inside together, and Isaac gathered his children into his arms. James was old enough to understand that his father had been gone, had been in danger, and he clung to Isaac with unusual intensity. Sarah, not quite understanding but picking up on the emotion in the room, began to cry until Isaac soothed her. That night, after the children were asleep, Isaac and Delilah talked long into the darkness. "I do not want to do that again," Isaac said. "I do not want to risk leaving them. They need a father and you need a husband." "Then promise me you will not," Delilah said. "Promise me that no matter what happens, you will come home to us." "I promise," Isaac said. "From now on, my place is here with you. Let others be the heroes. I just want to be a husband and a father." True to his word, Isaac never rode out with a posse again. He continued his work with the ranch but made it clear that his family came first. Samuel Morrison understood and respected that choice. The years passed peacefully after that. James grew into a serious, intelligent boy who loved books as much as his mother did. Sarah was a wild child, always climbing trees and riding horses and getting into mischief. In 1883, Delilah gave birth to another daughter, whom they named Martha. She was a quiet baby, content to watch the world around her with wide, curious eyes. Isaac built onto the house again, adding more rooms to accommodate their growing family. What had started as a simple two-room structure was now a proper ranch house, with a wide porch and a barn out back where Isaac kept their horses and a few cows. Delilah had to give up teaching when Martha was born, the demands of 3 young children being too much to balance with a full-time job. But she did not regret it. She loved being a mother, loved watching her children grow and learn, and she still gave private lessons in reading and arithmetic to some of the older children in town who wanted extra help. Isaac, for his part, had never been happier. Every evening, riding home from the ranch, he would see his house in the distance and feel a surge of contentment. This was his, all of it. The house, the land, the family waiting for him inside. He had built something real and lasting, something worth more than all the gold in California. In 1885, Samuel Morrison decided to retire and move back east to be near his daughter's family. He offered to sell Isaac a substantial portion of his ranch at a generous price. It was an opportunity Isaac could not pass up. With some help from the bank and the savings he had accumulated over the years, he managed to buy the land. Suddenly, Isaac was not just a ranch foreman but a rancher himself. It was overwhelming and exciting in equal measure. He worked harder than ever, determined to make the ranch successful. He hired several hands to help with the work, and slowly but surely, the operation began to thrive. Delilah supported him through all of it, managing their household finances, keeping the books for the ranch, and still finding time to be a mother to their children. She was his partner in every sense of the word, and Isaac fell more in love with her with each passing year. One evening in the fall of 1886, they were sitting on their porch, watching the sunset. The children were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Isaac reached over and took Delilah's hand. "You ever think about that day I found you?" he asked. Delilah smiled. "All the time. It was the worst day of my life and, in a strange way, the beginning of the best part of my life. I think about it too. If I had taken a different route that day, if I had been an hour earlier or later, I never would have found you. We would not have this. But you did find me," Delilah said, squeezing his hand, "and we do have this. Sometimes I think it was meant to be, that even in the midst of tragedy there was a purpose. I lost my first family and it broke my heart, but it led me to you, to this life, to these children. I would not change that, even if I could." Isaac leaned over and kissed her, a gentle, loving kiss that spoke of years of shared life and deep affection. "I love you, Delilah Tanner," he said, "more than I ever thought I could love anyone. I love you too, Isaac, always." As the years continued to pass, their ranch grew and prospered. Isaac gained a reputation as a fair but shrewd businessman, and other ranchers came to him for advice. Delilah became known throughout the territory for her intelligence and her charitable work. She organized a lending library in Agua Caliente, collected clothes and food for families in need, and served as an unofficial counselor to women facing difficult situations. James, as he grew older, showed an interest in law and politics. He was a natural speaker and debater, able to argue his point with logic and passion. Isaac and Delilah encouraged his ambitions, knowing their son had the potential to do great things. Sarah remained a tomboy, much more interested in horses and cattle than in books and learning. She could ride as well as any of the ranch hands and was not afraid of hard work. Isaac taught her everything he knew about ranching, and she soaked it up like a sponge. Martha, the youngest, was different from both her siblings. She was artistic and creative, always drawing or singing or making up stories. Delilah nurtured this creativity, providing Martha with paper and pencils and encouraging her imagination. In 1890, when James was 16, Sarah 14, and Martha 7, Delilah discovered she was pregnant again. It was a surprise, as she had thought her childbearing years were behind her. But it was a welcome surprise. The pregnancy was harder than her previous ones, her body older and less resilient. Dr. Collins, now in his 70s but still practicing, monitored her closely. In the spring of 1891, Delilah gave birth to twin boys. The labor was long and exhausting, and for a while, Isaac feared he might lose her. But Delilah was strong, and with Collins' skilled care, she pulled through. The twins, whom they named Daniel and David, were healthy and robust, with powerful lungs that they used frequently. With 5 children, the house was constantly full of noise and activity. It was chaotic and exhausting and wonderful. Isaac found he did not mind the sleepless nights or the constant demands. This was what life was supposed to be, full and rich and meaningful. As the new century approached, Isaac sometimes reflected on the path his life had taken. He was now 51 years old, no longer the young drifter who had found a dying woman in the desert. He had gray in his hair and lines on his face, earned from years of hard work and exposure to the elements. But he was content in a way he had never imagined possible. Delilah, at 45, was still beautiful to him. The years had been kind to her, or perhaps it was happiness that kept her young. She still had the same spark, the same strength that had first attracted him. They still took walks together in the evenings when they could, still talked for hours about everything and nothing. Their children were thriving. James had gone off to study law in Santa Fe, determined to become a lawyer and eventually a judge. He wrote home regularly, full of enthusiasm for his studies and his future. Sarah, now 20, had married one of the ranch hands, a steady young man named Tom Jessup. They lived in a small house on the ranch property, and Sarah was expecting her first child. Isaac was going to be a grandfather, a thought that filled him with joy and a bit of trepidation. Martha, at 17, was talking about going to art school in the East. Isaac and Delilah were trying to come to terms with the idea of their daughter traveling so far away, but they wanted to support her dreams. The twins, now 9, were typical boys, full of energy and mischief, keeping everyone on their toes. One summer evening in 1900, Isaac and Delilah rode out to the spring where they had first kissed all those years ago. It had become a tradition for them, visiting the spot on their anniversary. They sat by the water, holding hands, remembering. "I found something the other day," Delilah said, reaching into the pocket of her riding skirt. She pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. "It is from my old life before you found me. A letter from my father, written just before he died." She unfolded the paper carefully and began to read. "My dearest Delilah, life is full of sorrows and joys, often intermingled in ways we do not understand. But I have learned that the human heart is capable of remarkable resilience. No matter what comes, you will find a way to carry on, to build something beautiful from the ashes of what was lost. Have courage, my darling girl, and never give up hope." Delilah's eyes were bright with tears as she finished reading. "He wrote that when I was just a girl. I had forgotten about it until I found it in an old trunk. But reading it now, I realize he was right. I did lose everything, just as he feared, but I also found everything. I found you." Isaac pulled her close, his own eyes stinging. "And I found you. We found each other." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the sound of the water and the evening birds. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and Isaac thought about all the sunsets he had watched alone before Delilah came into his life. He would not trade a single moment of what they had built together for anything in the world. "You have any regrets?" Delilah asked softly. Isaac thought about the question seriously. "No. Oh, there are things I might have done differently, choices I would change if I could. But the overall path of my life, the way it led me to you and to our children, no, I have no regrets. What about you?" "The same. I will always grieve for Richard and Thomas, always wonder what might have been if they had lived. But I also know that I have been blessed beyond measure with you and our family. Life is strange, Isaac. It takes away with one hand and gives with the other. The key is to be open to the gifts when they come." They rode back to the ranch as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. The house was lit with lamps, warm and welcoming. They could hear the sounds of their children inside, the twins arguing over something, Martha singing as she worked on a drawing. Isaac helped Delilah down from her horse, and they stood there for a moment, just looking at their home. "We built something beautiful," Delilah said. "Just like my father said we would." "We did," Isaac agreed. "And it is all because of you, because you had the courage to keep going when everything seemed hopeless." "No," Delilah corrected gently. "It is because of us. Because we found each other and we chose to build this life together. Neither of us could have done it alone." Isaac smiled and kissed her forehead. "You are right, as always." They walked into the house together, hand in hand, ready to spend another evening with their family. There would be more trials ahead, more challenges to face. Life was never simple or easy, but they would face it together as they had faced everything else, with love and determination and hope. Over the next few years, their family continued to grow and change. Sarah gave birth to a daughter, Lucy, making Isaac and Delilah proud grandparents. James graduated from law school and returned to New Mexico, setting up a practice in Santa Fe but visiting home frequently. Martha did go east to art school, and though it was hard to have her so far away, her letters were full of excitement and discovery. The twins grew into strong, capable young men who loved the ranch life. They worked alongside Isaac, learning the business from the ground up. Isaac knew that when he was gone, the ranch would be in good hands. In 1905, Isaac and Delilah celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary. The whole family gathered for the occasion, along with friends from all over the territory. It was a joyous celebration, full of food and music and laughter. Dr. Collins, now retired and walking with a cane, gave a toast. 25 years ago, I watched two broken people find each other and begin to heal. Today, I see a family that is strong and whole, a testament to the power of love and perseverance. Isaac, Delilah, you have shown us all what is possible when two people commit to building a life together. May you have many more years of happiness. Everyone raised their glasses, and Isaac looked around at all the faces, his heart full. This was his legacy, not the ranch or the money, but these people, these relationships. He had started with nothing, just a dying woman in the desert and a desire to help. From that, they had built something that would last long after they were gone. As the party wound down and the guests began to leave, Isaac and Delilah found themselves alone on the porch once more. It was their favorite spot, the place where they had shared so many conversations over the years. 25 years, Delilah mused. It has gone by so fast. And yet it feels like I have known you forever, Isaac said. You remember what you said to me that first night in the cave. You said that living was the hard part, that it took courage. I remember. You were right. But what you did not say, what I have learned over these years is that living is also the beautiful part. The hard and the beautiful all mixed together. That is what life is. Isaac nodded, understanding. I wish I had known that sooner. I wasted a lot of years before I met you, just going through the motions. But those years led you to me, Delilah pointed out. If you had not been traveling that particular route on that particular day, we never would have met. Everything we went through, all the pain and loss, it brought us here. I suppose that is true. Isaac leaned back in his chair, contemplating. I used to think happiness was about avoiding pain, but now I know it is about accepting the pain as part of the journey and finding joy despite it. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one in the vast New Mexico sky. Inside, they could hear their family settling in for the night, the familiar sounds of home. Isaac, Delilah said softly. Yes, thank you, for stopping that day. For helping me when you could have just ridden past. For loving me when I did not think I could be loved again. Isaac reached over and took her hand, feeling the calluses that had formed over years of hard work, the same hands that had once played piano in St. Louis drawing rooms. Thank you for letting me. Thank you for building this life with me. You saved me just as much as I saved you. In the years that followed, they grew older together, facing the inevitable challenges that come with age. Isaac's knees began to trouble him, and he had to let the twins take over more of the heavy ranch work. Delilah's eyesight weakened, making it harder for her to do the detailed work she loved. But they adapted, finding new ways to be useful and productive. They became the wise elders of Agua Caliente, the couple everyone looked to for advice and guidance. Young people about to marry would come to them, asking for their secrets to a lasting relationship. Isaac and Delilah would smile and share what they had learned. Communication, respect, patience, and above all, choosing each other every single day. In 1912, they celebrated their 37th anniversary quietly, just the two of them. The children were all grown now, living their own lives, though they visited frequently. The ranch was still operating, run primarily by the twins with help from Sarah's husband Tom. Isaac was 73 now, Delilah 67. They were not as spry as they once were, but they were together, and that was what mattered. They still took walks when the weather permitted, though they did not go as far as they used to. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the sunset and talking about their day. One evening in early spring, as they sat together, Delilah said, Isaac, if you could go back and change anything about your life, would you? Isaac did not even have to think about it. No, not a single thing. Every choice I made, every path I took led me to you. And that makes everything worth it. Delilah smiled, the same smile that had first captured his heart all those years ago. I feel the same way. I lost my first family and it broke me. But from that brokenness came something new and beautiful, us, our children, this life. I would not change it. They sat together as the sky darkened and the stars came out. Two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and had built something that would endure. Their story was not one of easy romance or simple happy endings. It was a story of tragedy and triumph, of loss and renewal, of two broken people who came together and made each other whole. As the moon rose over the New Mexico landscape, casting its silver light over the ranch they had built together, Isaac Tanner and Delilah Armstrong Tanner held hands and knew that they had lived well. They had taken the worst that life could throw at them and had not just survived but thrived. They had created a legacy of love that would continue through their children and grandchildren, a testament to the power of hope and the resilience of the human spirit. And when, years later, They were both laid to rest in the small cemetery outside Agua Caliente, their graves side by side under a cottonwood tree. The town mourned the loss of two of its most beloved residents. But they also celebrated the life that Isaac and Delilah had lived, the love they had shared, and the example they had set. Their children carried on, raising their own families and passing down the stories of their parents' remarkable journey. The ranch continued to operate, a testament to Isaac's hard work and vision. And in the schoolhouse that Delilah had once taught in, a plaque was hung in her honor, commemorating her dedication to education and to the children of Agua Caliente. But perhaps the greatest legacy Isaac and Delilah left behind was not in buildings or land or even in their descendants. It was in the lesson they taught everyone who knew them, that even in the darkest moments when everything seems lost, there is always hope. That love can bloom in the most unexpected places. That two people, working together with commitment and faith, can build something beautiful that will last long after they are gone. The cowboy who had found a woman who had lost everything, and together they had built something beautiful, proved that the Old West was not just about gunfights and gold rushes. It was also about ordinary people finding extraordinary love, about building homes and families in a harsh land, about the quiet heroism of choosing to keep going when giving up would have been easier. In the end, Isaac and Delilah Tanner's story was a love story, pure and simple. Not a story of love at first sight or easy romance, but of love that was earned through shared struggle, built through years of partnership, and deepened through a commitment to stand by each other no matter what life brought. It was the kind of love that transforms not just the lovers themselves, but everyone around them, rippling out through generations. And so, in a small town in the New Mexico territory, the legend of Isaac and Delilah lived on, inspiring others to believe that no matter how lost they might feel, no matter what they might have lost, there was always the possibility of finding love, of building something new, of creating beauty from ashes. Their story became part of the fabric of Agua Caliente, told and retold around dinner tables and campfires, a reminder that the best stories are not always about the famous or the powerful, but about ordinary people who do extraordinary things simply by choosing love over fear, hope over despair, and life over death. The house that Isaac built still stood for many years after they were gone, eventually becoming a historical landmark. Visitors would come to see where the famous couple had lived, to stand on the porch where they had spent so many evenings, to walk the land they had worked so hard to cultivate. And though the physical structures eventually crumbled with time, as all things must, the spirit of what Isaac and Delilah had created remained, a testament to the enduring power of love and the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. Their story was complete, their circle closed. From the moment Isaac found Delilah in the desert to the moment they were laid to rest side by side, they had lived a life full of meaning and purpose. They had loved deeply, worked hard, raised a family, and contributed to their community. They had shown that it was possible to overcome tragedy, to find joy after sorrow, to build a future even when the past seemed to have destroyed all possibilities. And that, in the end, was the true beauty of their story. Not that it was perfect, but that it was real. Not that they never faced difficulties, but that they faced them together. Not that they forgot the pain of their pasts, but that they did not let that pain define their future. Isaac Tanner and Delilah Armstrong Tanner lived, loved, and left the world a better place than they found it. And really, what more could anyone ask from a life?